Hello guys and welcome to this video. Now I've got a lovely Tudor Black Bay 41mm here. Now I am not going to be touching this one, I'm not going to be taking this apart today. I am in fact going to try and replicate it as close as possible with Namokimods parts. I'm going to make a watch right now. I'll try and film the whole process and this is definitely going to be the inspiration for it. This Tudor Black Bay served me so well over the last 2 years. Absolutely love this watch. Mine is the 41 older case size. It's the in-house movement. If you are considering one of these watches, absolutely go out and buy it. However, they are expensive. It is a luxury item. So if you love the look of it and you want to try and create a watch yourself, perhaps for the first time, you could follow along and learn how to do that today. Now, love this watch and let's see what Namoki has come up with. And Namoki is a parts supplier, high quality parts from Singapore to make your own watches. This is their Black Bay 58 case. Now, unfortunately for me, because I do have a larger wrist, they don't do the 41 size Black Bay case, or at least not yet. For most people though, I know the Black Bay 58 size is super popular at about 39mm. So you can see there are definite resemblances across the case shape. The Black Bay 58 design, the Namoki one on the right is of course thinner as well. The crown style, the crystal style, the thinner bezel, these are really thin bezels on the right compared to most Seiko mod bezels. I do have still the sticker on the glass there, but you can see the domed crystal. We've not got bezel fitted yet. This is a sapphire crystal and as mentioned about 39mm case size. Now interestingly, Namoki also actually sell this as a set. So you get the case, the bezel, the crystal, the chapter ring. I'm not actually sure if the chapter ring is removable or not, but we won't worry about that because it's the same brushed steel as the original. The crown, spring bars of course. I do believe you get a plain case back, but I'm gonna upgrade the case back on mine to a slim sapphire one. And this bracelet, which is really a good effort when it comes to trying to match the genuine Tudor bracelet. Lovely bracelet on the Tudor, by the way, but you can see they've got the rivet pattern down the side. I will show these a little more clearly once I've made it so we can see a side-by-side comparison. Okay, of course, you're not going to get as good a quality parts as are on the genuine Tudor, but let's not forget, for a few $100s, you are able to not only assemble your own watch, but also have a pretty close link to the original without sort of trying to copy it, as in make a fake watch, when that's not what we're doing. We're making an homage watch that looks the same, but the point of it is it allows you to actually have a go at making a watch yourself. Now, moving on, the first thing I'll do is actually do some movement work. So we're going to have a look at the movement I've chosen for this. You'll see why I've chosen this movement in a minute. This is Seiko's NH38 movement. You can see, we take it out of the movement holder. We've got the, zoom in on it a little bit. We've got the rotor and we have this lovely gold balance wheel, and on the front you can see it as well. Now this is what you would use in an open heart watch. The reason I'm using it here, even though we are going to go for a black dial, is that this is one of the Seiko movements that doesn't have a date. So that means the crown operation is just a little simpler and better. If you've got a no date dial, this is the movement you would want. So it all comes as you see here from suppliers such as Namoki. In fact, you can buy all the parts necessary to make this in Namoki, including a movement holder. I use a simple 3D printed one, but you can of course choose any of Namoki's own designs. Next, I'm just going to put it on here just so it works with the camera a bit better. Let's have a look at the dial. Now this is Namoki's own dial. You'll notice I'm wearing one glove as well in this video, and this is typically how I make watches. I find I need the dexterity without a glove on my left hand, but anything I'm touching where I could leave marks, on my right hand, I leave gloveless on the left. I wear a glove, just find it easier this way to grip tools and so on. So there we have it, guys. Oop, there, it is a bit hard through the camera, but this is Namoki's Black Bay style dial, and it is super similar. Let's try and hold it next to the genuine one. I mean, obviously from a distance you'd be hard pressed to spot the difference. Of course, this has got the Namoki logo, 200 meters automatic, similar text. Of course, this is not a chronometer certified watch, so you won't have that text on the Namoki dial. But in terms of color layout, I'd say the triangle on the Tudor is a little bit more steep, but generally it's a really good look. Yeah, they've matched it really well. And the logo, though it's a Namoki logo, of course, is subtle. So I'm hoping that translates well onto the watch. So let's keep going then. On the back of your watch dial, I just pick it up. This is where the gloved hand comes in useful. You've actually got 4 pins, and we're going to need to remove some of these in order to fit it onto this movement. The reason it has 4 pins is because sometimes you want to use the movement with the crown at 3, like we are, and sometimes you want to use the crown with the movement with the crown at 4, like this. So that's why you would need to remove the pins, because they go into these 2 holes you can just about see there. So how do we remove these pins, and which ones do we remove? I'm just going to zoom out a minute. The first thing to do is to line up your dial and just have a look at which pin it is we're going to remove. Now, from experience, I know we are currently going to remove the closer pin to 3 o'clock. So that's how I do it. Let's move the movement out of the way for a minute. And we are going to remove this pin right there. Zoom back in to see a bit clearer. Actually remove it, I'm just going to use some simple pliers. Nothing special required here. We're just going to try and keep the camera in focus. I'm simply going to grip the little pin and wiggle. And sometimes you're lucky and these jump off nice and flat. This one didn't. You can see there's a little bump of the pin left over. I'll fix that in a second. Now the next thing I do, if I knew out of these 2 I remove the first one, I'm just going to rotate the dial like so, and on these 2 I'm also going to remove the first one. So gripping it with the jaws, wiggling it. The reason I'm not doing this over the movement is just in case bits of metal fall out. But there we go. I think that one came off a little bit cleaner. Now, in case you're wondering, on the back of the dial, you've got some glue and some holes holding things down. So that one is still protruding a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is simply use a file. I've got these small metal files. You can use a simple nail file as well. And I'm just going to basically file across here. Now again, I'm being careful not to do this over the movement, but any sort of filing work and removing of metal should be done well away from any parts that you're going to end up putting into the watch. Now with this one, typically it files off pretty quickly, and I'm not too worried about scratching the back of the dial. I'd rather make sure it is fully flat, almost there. So as soon as I've got this one filed down, I'm just going to blow it with the blower to get rid of anything extra. So that's nice and smooth now. If we move over to the other one. Now the first time I ever did this, I was terrified of getting some of these filings or dust onto the front of the dial, but honestly it's really hard to do that. There's a tiny amount of dust that comes off. Be careful, dust is definitely not your friend when you're making watches. I've even got an air purifier running in the room. I'm trying to remove as much dust in the air as I can, but inevitably you can't get rid of all of it, so you just have to be extra careful. So that is smooth enough. So we just removed the majority of that little post. It's a tiny little bump left, but it's no different than any of these. Now this is where the blower comes in handy, because just putting it in this direction, and you can see we've just got the 2 pins left. Make sure the bottom of that is all clean. And now we're going to take our movement back, and it's a shame to cover up that lovely open heart. However, you'll see the reason for this a bit more clearly later. So I'm just trying to drop in the dial. I tend to start with the pin nearest the crown. It's a little bit hard for me to see it from a distance, so bear with me. And then have a look at where the center hole lines up, and it should all close together. So we're just dropping this on. I'm looking around this side now, just to make sure I'm in the right place. And yeah, it's as simple as that. We're just gonna pop the dial on. Now, you could use a genuine Seiko dial here. If you can find one with a crown at 3, it helps, because then you don't need to do the last task. But you can just drop the dial straight on, and of course you get a real Seiko dial too. That would be an option. There's not too many Seiko dials in this kind of orientation though, and I really wanted to match the Black Bay, so I'm going for aftermarket. Please guys, do not be tempted to buy a dial off eBay with no logo and just stick a Seiko logo on it. I mean, you can do that yourself if you like, but even my own watches, I never put a non-Seiko, I never put stickers that say Seiko, Seiko logos, anything like that on a non-Seiko part. Just my own rhetoric for watch modding. So I would advise you to do the same, because you end up just appreciating your builds more if they are genuine. Anyway, I digress. We've now got the dial on the movement, and now we've got to set the hands. So let's have a look at the hands. Of course, we have gone for Snowflake hands. These are from Namoki as well, so you can buy pretty much all the parts you need to make. In fact, you can buy literally all the parts to make this watch from one store. They do ship worldwide, and their shipping is amazing, especially if you go for the express option. And I like these little hand holders, hand cases that they ship the hands in, because it's super easy to pick them up from there. So they've got gold hands and on a gilt dial, which is basically a gold marker dial. And we are going to be installing these in a particular order, so hour first, then minute, then seconds. And we're going to try our best to make them line up. Now, this is often people's like most scary bit, and it was mine for many years as well, because I honestly, it's because I was trying to use the wrong tools as well. Namoki do sell these as well as part of a kit. What you would like, or what I'd recommend now, is getting a set like this. These are Bergeon tools. You can get, I mean, they're very simple, just plastic ends. Don't try and get some kind of press, because they never really line up that well. That's what I used for a while to start with, until I got these, and now setting hands is no big deal. So how we do it is, at this point I'm also going to pick up a bit of Rodico. This is like special blue tack essentially, that helps you pick things up, get rid of dust. There's so many uses for this stuff, so absolutely essential that you get some Rodico. They do provide that in the Namoki kit as well, but only a small amount. I would just go ahead and buy a bar of it, because you end up using it quite a lot. Now, how I'm going to go about this is, because there is no date on the movement, I don't actually mind where the hands are pointing right now. So we're going to set the hour first, and I'm just going to set it to 12. So if we pick up the hour hand using the Rodico, and I'm going to drop it pointing to 12. Now, it doesn't actually matter where I'm putting the hour hand right now, but if you were doing this with a date movement, you would probably want to put your hour hand, you'd want to move move the hands forward until you get the date wheel change, and then you would put the hand at 12, and that would be your hour hand at 12. That would be midnight basically, and then you'd go from there. With this one, it's a bit simpler. There's no date to worry about. Just drop the hand on. It's not perfect yet, but don't worry, we're gonna adjust it before we put the minutes on. So I am gonna try my best here to steady the camera so we can see clearly what's going on. I'm gonna use the gray end, I'm not actually sure of the size, on my Bezel tool, and we are simply gonna press the gold circular area end obviously down. We're not going to press super hard. You really don't need to push too hard, but you do want to try and keep the tool very straight as you do it. So let me see if I can get the right angle. There we go. I'll try and do it with my hands as much out of the way as I can, so you guys can see the black dial doesn't help here, and this is quite a low light situation too. So that's essentially, that's on now. It just takes a little press down. I can see from the side, it might not be totally straight, and it might be pointing, if I show you that, pointing up a little bit. So I am gonna just press it again, same position, just a little bit more forward, and that's now dead straight. I really like that. And it's actually straightened in terms of the timing as well. So if I wind the movement a little bit, it was running before, I'm gonna pull it out. This will actually stop the movement running while we're setting the hands, and this is special about the NH family of movements because they do have stop seconds time setting, which does actually make them easier to work on as well than a 7S movement, which is always running unless it's dead. So I'm just going to try and set the hour to exactly 12. So you can see with Seiko movements there is of course quite a decent bit of variation. It does tend to, look, if I jiggle the crown you can see the hand move a fair distance. This one's actually a bit better than usual. The minute hand is probably going to be more obvious, but I'm going to set this to as close as I can, dead on 6 o'clock actually, not 12, because I find it more successful when I am setting hands if I do it to 6 p.m. for the next stage. This is where we're going to put the minute hand on. Just want to make sure, you can see my dial's lifted there a little bit. There we go. I just want to make sure the hand has got clearance over the marker. So next thing is the minutes. So I'm going to take the minute hand, I'm going to try and drop it onto that center point there and rest it at 12 o'clock or 60 minutes. There we go, that was actually quite a good effort considering I'm doing this through a camera. If I take my smaller tool, this is going to be the black size tool. This is actually slightly too small, but I prefer using this one for minute hands. So we've got it nice and straight there. I'm going to go ahead and press this one too. You can generally feel a little resistance and a little click almost when it goes in. Be careful not to push the minute hand and especially next the second hand too far down because it's a bit of a pain to straighten them if needed later. You do want to make sure your hands are totally straight as you go. So that one came on really well, and key little test to do is of course to put it over the hour hand and just check the clearance, and that's really nice and straight, so I'm really happy with that. This doesn't always happen, guys. I may make it look a little bit easy, but honestly, it can be difficult to do that. So don't be shy about having to remove your hands and having another go. So if we go past the 12, you can see close enough, because you know, if you jiggle the crown, you'll find that there is a bit of play in both sets of hands. So that is, yeah, that's about as close as I can honestly get it. And the key one as well is 6. What I find sometimes I set it at 12 perfectly, but then by the time we get to 6, it's not straight on. So I prefer to actually set the hours at 6 because you're going to see 6 o'clock more often than you are midnight, usually. Anyway, we are now going to start doing the second hand. Now, I have a slightly unusual method for this. Perhaps I'm not alone, but for the second hand, I'm going to pick it up, rotate it. Okay, I'm going to stick the end of my Rodico on the end of the second hand. So it goes like this. And then I'm going to actually stick this Rodico to the dial. Now, some people might squirm at this because we really don't want to touch the dial as much as possible. But I like doing it this way because there is a tiny pin, and I really can't show you very closely on this camera, but you can obviously see where the middle of the dial, where all of the hands attach, there is a tiny little pin that sticks out, and it's got to go into that tiny little peg underneath the seconds. So I'm trying to steer, and this is a nice thing doing it this way, you can literally steer the Rodico around to try and find the sweet spot where it's dead on in the center. So you can drag the Rodico a little bit and it makes a big movement on the other side. So I think that's about going to be, I'm just looking directly down, and that's probably going to be about right. Now this is the other thing, I don't know for sure, so I have to just use some trial and error. I'm going to drop, sorry, I need to stop putting my hands in the way. I'm going to just push this down, and this is just a flat-ended brass tool. There is no hole in this. Sorry, I'm going to have to steady it. Try and move my finger away at the last minute. Okay, now that's not going on. So that means I haven't lined it up perfectly. You can see it's probably a bit to the right. And that's no big deal. We can just try and reposition it a little bit and have another go. There we go. Okay, so as soon as you got it in the sweet spot, I'm sorry it wasn't in focus, but it will just plunge down, okay, like a syringe plunging in. And next, all I do is gently pull this away. Now, there is a bit left on the hand and there is a bit left on the dial, but we'll get a new piece and clean that off. So this is where I actually test the depth of the second hand, and you can see that it's proud a little bit. It's sticking out a little too far. I would like to drop it in just a touch more. So I will do that. Again, just with this tool. So I'll try and let it focus. In fact, I'll see if I can lock the focus there. So I should have done that from before. So I've just pushed it a little bit further, but I really don't want to push it too far down because I don't want the second hand to start touching the minutes hand, for example. So if we take the minutes back, that's a little closer and a bit better. So the reason you want to drop your second hand in at about this distance is just because some cases, if the second hand touches this crystal, which is going to be above it, it's going to stop the watch. So you do want to make sure your hands are nice and flat down, but they're also obviously clear of each other and clear of the dial. This is especially scary for expensive original Seiko dials. If you have a hand accidentally pressed in too far, it could scratch up the dial as it goes round. You don't want to drop hands and things on the dial. Now, I haven't set the watch running yet because I want to remember where I put that Rodico to fit the second hand. And that's what I'm going to be trying to remove now by simply kickstarting the watch. And you can see the hands move. This is often a really satisfying moment, seeing the second hand move for the first time. And now all I'm doing with a fresh piece is just checking against some light. Now I usually have a much brighter light over me while I'm doing this, but I've just moved to my usual filming area to make this video. Okay, but we just want to pick up any Rodico just with another piece of Rodico. And then on the second hand, you can stop it and just stroke it, basically. That should remove any little bits of Rodico. Now, sometimes you'll also find hands that are a bit they shouldn't mostly be shiny. Sometimes they're a little bit matte. And if you generally rub some Rodico over it, gently like this, brushing it more than rubbing it, it will tend to clean everything up nicely as well. Now, this, we're kind of halfway there, guys. So this is pretty much where we're gonna get to before we are gonna case the watch. I will show you a little trick of removing this without dropping the whole movement, but I will need one more tool for that, which I'm just gonna grab. All right, guys, now I've got the dial basically prepared on the movement. We are gonna use an extra crown stem. Now you could use any small pin for this, but try and find something quite small to use. If you've got a spare one of these, it's even better, or an actual crown stem. We're gonna rotate this over, and we are gonna find when the watch is running, this is the scary part because you've got a live running movement and you're just holding it upside down. So this was always quite tricky for me. You can put it back in the movement holder, but I prefer just to hold it. We are gonna locate this little pin here, and I'm going to push on it. Now, I find this easier to do with the same hand I'm holding the watch with, because when I push on that, I can just release the actual crown, take this one away, flip it over. I'm just being careful to hold it by the edges here and drop it down on the, just get rid of some of these bits of dust, on the casing cushion. You can get much nicer ones of these. I've just used a simple one. But here, this is your chance really to fully inspect the dial for any dust. The blower definitely comes in handy for blowing bits of dust away, and just checking you've not got any little bits of dust or marks or hairs or whatever on the dial before you case it. This is often ends up being one of the longest parts of a watch build once you get good at it, because you find that one piece of dust that is really annoying. On the case side, we are simply going to remove the protective film and inspect. Oops, I forgot there was the crystal gasket there. No, sorry, not the crystal, the CASEBACK gasket was on the back of the case there. We are just going to have a quick look around the case. We can remove the crown because we will be reinstalling that later with a stem, and I'll show you how to do that as well. And really nice case by Namoki. We are going to drop this in straight over the top. Now, usually when you get the case, just check there isn't any dust inside it. Generally there isn't, but in case there is, the best way I find to remove the dust is move your dial out of the way and just blow it. Try avoid touching it as much as possible, and it's okay to get the blower really far in there into all the edges and having a look at with a really strong light. Now I won't be doing that right now, so I want to show you the process, but you would want to shine a light directly down this way because that's going to pick up more and more of any areas where it might be a bit dusty. This is quite common for home builds. You just need to spend a while cleaning your crystal. Now you can also use a piece of Rodico if you spot something, just one piece in the corner somewhere, and just gently lift it. That will also work. So generally I make sure it's super clean and dust free. And then we are going to try and zoom in for this again. We are going to drop it straight over. Now when you drop your case on, apologies, it keeps going out of focus. There we go. We are going to Just try and make sure the crown side is gonna reach the little notch on the side of the movement so that it fits in nicely. Looks like it has already, just at the top there. Don't worry too much if it's not gone perfectly, because as you flip it over, it should hold itself. And you can see the problem. I just need to rotate this movement a little bit clockwise so that the crown stem fits into that little protrusion there. To do that, I just use a spring bar tool. And firstly, you can just try and press on the middle of the movement gently. If not, I generally find a plain bit of the movement like here and just rotate gently round and then have another press and then have a look from the front. So you can see it's seated properly now. It was very close anyway, and it's already looking really nice. So what I'm going to do here is just check inside for any dust. I don't really want to have to keep taking it in and out. If you do need to take the movement out for any reason, simple way is just to use, again, a spring bar tool, probably this fork end. I generally just slide it in just under this part where the crown would go and lift this part up, then turn it upside down and tap it and it'll fall out. You'll be surprised at how robust watch movements are. They are really not as dainty and as susceptible to shocks and damage as you might think. Just be very careful never to touch this part because that will definitely ruin your accuracy and potentially stop the movement working. But touching things like the rotor, you know, tapping the movement to get it out, pressing it in, generally this is not going to affect it at all. I've never had an issue for those reasons. Bear in mind, the watch movement is designed to withstand some element of daily wear, so this is not going to be an issue. And if it is, well, the movements aren't that expensive to replace anyway. So now that we're at this stage, I'm just going to check the dial and then I'll be back for inserting the crown. All right, guys, now I'm back with the watch case, crystal and dial all clean, put together. We are going to next attempt to, where's it gone? Here it is, adding the crown. So the crown is very similar to the actual Black Bay crown. It's even got some gaskets in here to aid with water resistance. Speaking of water resistance, this case you don't need to really worry about because it comes pre-fitted properly with the crystal. So we didn't need to worry about fitting the crystal either. That way you don't even need a crystal press, which is often a big inexpensive tool if you get a good one. So with relatively simple tools like I've got here, you can build the whole watch and maintain its water resistance. The crystal is often the trouble point when assembling a watch, and also the crown. Just check the gaskets are all there, which they are. There should be 2 gaskets here and sometimes a gasket inside as well. Occasionally they're in as part of the crown tube that's there. Now the crown stem is usually supplied, you usually get a couple of these, so it's dead small. Try and rest it on in fact I'll just hold it this way. You can see it's got a kind of square side and a pointy end that's going to go inside the movement, and we've got this threaded part on this side which needs to be cut to the right length. Now I fortunately end up with loads of crown stems, so I can do this quite quickly, and I don't worry so much about if it's too short or too long. But if you've only got a few and you're not sure about this, it might be worth getting a couple extra crown stems because you don't want to pause your build just because you've only got one. So I do believe with every crown stem cutting thing, such as a case set like this or a new crown, you usually end up getting 2 just in case anyway. So how are we gonna cut this? Well, same set of pliers. Now I'm gonna guess the length because usually it's about something like halfway, well actually about 2/3 of this needs to be removed. So I'm just gonna have a go at that, and I'm just gonna use this end and we're gonna go about there. Okay, you can see I'm just gonna clamp it and I'm just gonna try and point it well away from me and the movement. So it can drop down over on the right. And next we need to just check how straight we managed to cut it, because you do want this nice and flat, otherwise it might damage the crown as you screw it in. And in order to straighten it, of course, you could just go ahead and use the same file as before. So I'll file this and then we can have a look. It's better, of course, to file this well away from your open movement because you don't want any filings going in there. So now I've got the crown stem nice and straight and flat at the end. I'm going to just simply turn the crown onto it. Now you may have read or seen some people use Loctite, which is basically a thread locker, a glue, sort of a weaker glue just to make the thread really tight. I have honestly never used this, and I've never had a crown unscrew from the stem. So it's better just to keep it standard, don't bother putting anything on it, just get it nice and tight. I think if you can get it tight enough, that's better than having to use any sort of essentially glue in there in case you need to remove it, especially for the first time. So I'm going to be screwing this on. And again, quite hard to do from a distance to find the pin. There we go. Okay, so it's going to start simply fastening on. Now at some point it's going to be really hard to hold this tiny little end while you're screwing this on tightly. So what we use is a simple pair of tweezers, and all I'm going to do is use the back of the tweezer end, put this up here and tighten it like so. So I'm squeezing this down. I learned this from Minute Watch. I'll always shout him out for this procedure because as soon as I saw it, I thought that just makes total sense. We're basically trapping the square end of the crown stem in this side, squeezing this, and it's almost like a torque wrench, because at some point, if you go too far, if you tighten it too much, it will actually start jumping. So generally, this is a great way just to get it nice and tight. Now, I'm not going to over tighten it. I have damaged crowns by going too far before. So when you feel it like it's going to start jumping through there, or it could potentially start bending something, obviously stop. So we are nice and tight there. There's no chance that's going to unscrew on its own. And we can now insert it into the movement and check how close I got the length. Now there are actual measurements out there, but not for all cases. So let's see. So as I drop this crown in, I should be able to obviously wind it, and then I should be able to, you can feel a little bit of movement there, that's fine. And then if I press it in, I should be able to close it once it's all the way screwed down. Now, I think I'm almost there, but I need to remove just a small amount extra. Generally, when you unscrew it, it should pop out, but probably not quite this much. So you can see the movement there. I would like to reduce that a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is press the little pin, take the crown out, unscrew it, cut just like 0.5 millimeter off it, and repeat the process. And then I'll be back with you once I've done that. But same procedure as before. So I've now fitted the crown as I would like it. So there is a little bit of movement, but not too much. And when you close it, of course, it comfortably goes right up to the case. And when we unfasten it, it pops out just a little bit about here. There we go. And when you pull it to its extremity, you don't get so far out that you see the actual crown stem. That's a pretty good gauge on how far the crown should be out. So there should be about 1 millimeter or so of movement. When you push it back in, that just ensures that it is easy to use. It's not too tight up and it's not going to damage any threads. So the crown is in and of course looking nice. Let's now proceed to closing this. Now you want to do this as soon as you can. I'm just giving the rotor a wipe in case it's got any prints or any fingerprints or any other marks on it. At this point, I always like to just give it a quick blow with the blower. Now, usually with cases, new cases, all the gaskets and things come pre-greased. You can get a Seiko silicone grease, which is designed for their gaskets and cases. Generally, if you are just buying this as a new kit and you're going to use it quite soon, then no issue with the gasket as it comes. You've got this is a part which you would need to get separately if you wanted it, but this is a Sapphire, slim Sapphire caseback designed for SKX 007, but it will fit any Seiko case, Seiko derived case like this with an NH movement. So I've just blown that as well. It does have a protective sticker on the other side. I'm trying not to touch the insides of those because your fingerprint will be forever under there. And you just drop in the gasket, drop in the case back, and gently screw it down. Now, this is one feature that the genuine Black Bay does not have, and this is an exhibition case back. I think it's totally worth the $20 or $30 these go for on Namokimods. Now, I'm going to use this type of caseback closing tool. You can use anything. These are fortunately quite easy to close because they've got the cutout pins. If it's the Rolex type or the Tudor type that you need a special tool for, those are a bit more tricky to work with. You can just close those with a rubber ball. However, most Seiko cases use this type of setup. So all you do is rotate this down. I often find that you can go as tight as you like on the first go, but if you leave it for a while, you might find that you need to tighten it again as it settles in. Just give it another go with the caseback closer, and you'll be good to go. So excellent, we are almost there, guys, and that wasn't too difficult, and hopefully this might have already inspired some of you to have a go. Next bit is the bezel, and this is often my favorite part because for this type of watch it really brings it its identity and its final design, and you can finally see your full case. And at this point, let's just remind ourselves of what we're going for. And though the hands are clearly a slightly different size and maybe some of the shapes are a bit different, I am really quite pleased with how these two look together. Now for the bezels, the Black Bay 58 usually has a gold numbered bezel as well. That's the quick way to identify a 58 versus a 41, sorry, Black Bay 58 versus a heritage Black Bay such as this, the 41 model, is by the color of the numbers on the bezel if it's a black dial. So how we're gonna do it is I've chosen the closest bezel insert I could to this one. I actually want to match my watch, not necessarily the 58. And I have picked out this bezel insert, which is Namoki's Tudor style bezel insert, really nice. The other advantage is that this is ceramic, whereas the genuine Tudor is only aluminium. However, do not let that put you off buying the actual Tudor if you are looking for one, because I've been wearing this one without much, I haven't been babying this at all, and I have 0 scratches on the bezel. The reason it's aluminium is because of how thin it is. In reality, there is no way you could get a ceramic bezel that thin and still be durable. So that's why they use aluminium, and whatever they do to it, it makes it super scratch proof anyway. Now for the Seiko, where possible, I wanted to upgrade certain parts. So we've got a sapphire crystal, we've got an automatic movement, we've got a screw down crown, we've got a rotating bezel, and we've got on this one a sapphire case back. Let's have a ceramic bezel as well to try and actually make almost a better watch than the Tudor, in terms of some specs at least. So let's have a look at this. Now you could drop it on and just to check how it looks. And look at that, awesome. Already looks great. and you can just check how it would fit up against the crystal and everything else you've got. But of course we're going to need to secure it in there and find that magic alignment that Seikos sometimes struggle with. Now be careful with especially ceramic bezels. You don't want to drop them on a tiled floor, for example, because they are brittle. They will shatter and snap. Now to actually fit your bezel, the first thing I do is find a sweet spot on the bezel action. Now I was really impressed actually with the clicks, the feel of the bezel that's already fitted to this Black Bay 58 style case. It reminds me a little bit of the incredible bezel action on the genuine Tudor. Of course, it's never going to be quite as sweet as the Tudor bezel action, and the Tudor's got a little trick up its sleeve in that at 12 it's a slightly different depth of click, and therefore even if you're not looking at the watch you can always put the marker back to 12. That's a little thing you don't get even with the fake Black Bays, so that's something to check out if you're ever buying a used one. But anyway, on this the bezel action is really nice. There's just 120 clicks on here rather than 60 on the Tudor. So I am finding a spot. So here I just felt the click from above. I prefer to align the bezel because there's a click spring here and a click spring here, 2 clicks, one up there, one down there, and if you feel it, you'll hear one coming from the top and one from the bottom. I generally just like to have the click at the top, so I've stopped it right on the click at the top. This bezel has next to no play in it as well, which is quite rare, so I'm really pleased with the quality of the bezel used on this case. So when it comes to fitting the bezel, you will need a 3M tape sticker. These are always supplied with either bezels or bezel inserts, typically from any store. So I'm just gonna remove the middle. Sometimes it's harder to lift it the other way. So I'll just remove the sticky middle part. Let's get rid of that. Next, I'm gonna take my tweezers I had a second ago over here, and I'm gonna lift the ring and stick it onto, let's see if I can do this a bit closer, into the inside of the bezel on the watch. So once you get round, try and keep this close to the edge as possible. So I've just put that top left side in. I'm going to try and use my tweezer just to press it down a bit, right up to the edge there. You can use a screwdriver for this too. And you're going to go all the way around, and assuming you've got the right size sticker, it should fit perfectly around the edge. You don't want anything hanging out over the edge because it'll annoy you. It's a pain to remove it later. So this bezel ring seems actually like it could be too big, but that's not a big deal. All I'm going to do is cut a little bit off it here and then stick it down and then peel it away. So we got the bezel ring sticker ring attached and the top layer peeled off. Now all I'm going to do is drop this on, trying to match up the triangle at 12 with the markers on the dial. So this is where the alignment comes in. Try your best to do this well the first time. It just saves you having to then remove the entire bezel just to fix it. So I'm quite happy with that, I think. Now, if anything, I always go a little bit too far this way, over on the left, because it's quite easy, while it's still sort of semi-stuck, just to push it back the other way and align it properly. So quite happy with that alignment now. And of course you can test it out for the first time, bezeled and ready to be used as a dive watch or a timer. There we go. So really nice outcome. I'm really pleased actually with this. Of course, there are a few key differences. We can't get away from that on the Namoki watch, but if we compare them now, from a first glance, I you of course might be fooled into thinking the right hand one was a nice new Tudor Black Bay, and look how nice it is. I really actually am impressed with the dial because it's a super like matte black finish, really legible. When I had a look at it under a light, it's almost like Vanta black or something. It's very deep black, doesn't create a lot of reflection, super legible. You can see the yellow tone of the gold is a little bit lighter on the Namoki one. The bezel insert red part is brighter. Loom pip's a bit different. This insert is made out of aluminium, of course, whereas the right hand one is ceramic, but really nice outcome. Let's get it onto the bracelet now and have a proper look around. All right guys, there it is. That is the Black Bay homage build that you guys can make yourself now by just following the steps in this video. Nothing too difficult, and the outcome is just fantastic. Here it is next to the genuine Black Bay, and on the bracelet. I'm really impressed with this bracelet, honestly guys. I thought it would be good, but I didn't expect it to be this solid. The only gripe about it, I guess for some of my watchers as well, is going to be the male end link on the Namoki version compared to the female end link on the genuine Tudor one. However, in terms of the look, the finish, the design, they even did the rivet style, which I know not everyone likes, but I do think it grows on you and it's a nice touch by Tudor on the original model. The ceramic bezel, while I was fitting the bracelet, I remembered I put the Sapphire case back on it as well. I just love to see a movement. I've got a nice signed buckle there with the Namoki sort of divide logo, and really solid links. Just feels good quality. In terms of weight, we just try and keep them in the same hand for a moment. These are both sized to me. Yeah, the Tudor's definitely heavier, but it is a little, but it's close. If you were to pick this watch up, I'm sure you would be impressed. It's really hard to convey the feeling of quality through the camera. But honestly guys, don't waste your money on AliExpress. Go ahead, buy yourself a watchmaking kit. Go to Namokimods. Use my discount as well. I forgot to tell you that. 5% off any time at Namokimods with Seiko Mods to buy 5. Have a go at making one of these, because if you're into watches, the ultimate best thing you can do is just try to make one. You get such an appreciation of what goes into it, and all the fine details and appreciation for the movements, even simpler movements like in this Seiko NH36 that we used here. And yeah, it's just a lovely community to be part of. So there you have it guys. Those are, well, 2 Black Bays, one that I built myself, one is my favorite watch, which I'm sure I'm still gonna wear. Unfortunately, this one on the right is just a tad too small for me. I will give you a wrist shot anyway. I have just sized it, but putting this watch on, honestly, being an owner of a real one, is the clasp is a little more rattly. I'm yet to take off the sticker. The clasp isn't quite as nice. The bracelet itself, I'm really happy with. The mailing end link might bother some of you, but maybe they'll release version 2. But even on my 7 3/4 inch wrist, it doesn't look too small. It definitely still fits reasonably well. I could get away with this watch, and just for comparison, I will put you a quick wrist shot of my actual Tudor in a moment. In terms of height, this one definitely wears thinner and a bit more comfortably on the wrist. It feels well balanced on the bracelet as well, not too top heavy. So really happy with how this came out. I'm sure this is going to be a super popular request. I can't wait to make one with an actual Seiko dial as well. And here it is, just to finish things off. You can see the nicer clasp on the Tudor. See the signed clasp there as well. Just everything about the Tudor bracelet is fantastic. But there you go guys. Is there probably what, $1,500, maybe more, in today's market, maybe a little, maybe close to $2,000 difference between these two watches. I think they can't be compared really, because this one you're going to make yourself, and if this is the first mod you make, you've done the right thing, because high quality parts, great finishing. You will really enjoy the process if you give it a go. Anyway guys, I know this has been a long one. I've really enjoyed it, and you can see actually next to it, it's a bit hard to get the focus right. I'm just surprised at how small it looks there, but I think that is just the effect of the camera. It is definitely a smaller diameter, but I'm really pleased with these parts. Well done, Namoki, for getting this case out. I hope you do more of them. I hope you do a 41 size. Please do for me. But yeah, super happy with this outcome. I wish I'd done it sooner, guys. And please check out my links in the description. Follow me on Instagram for all my latest watch builds and other stories. And I'll see you next time. Let me know how it goes in case you try and make one.